a father and daughter, were conducting geological research deep in the mountains. Unexpectedly, a horrifying scene appeared before them.
Papa?
Accompanied by a low growl sound, a massive creature slowly rose to its feet. Each of its steps shook the ground beneath. Wherever it went, it left ruins in its wake. What does its appearance signify? Is it the arrival of disaster or something more sinister? The story dates back 1,000 years. Legend has it that in the depths of the Double Mountains in Norway, there were ancient trolls made of earth and stone hidden. They are tall and robust, but their appearances are grotesque and terrifying, instilling fear in all who see them. In addition to this, trolls possess immense strength. They prefer to roam human settlements at night, destroying buildings and farmland. Humans appear as insignificant as ants before them. However, trolls have a fatal weakness. When exposed to sunlight, they turn to a pile of stones. Legends have always been mysterious and fantastical. Moreover, no one has ever seen a real troll. Thus, in the eyes of modern people, this is merely a fairy tale concocted by ancient peoples. Until a few days ago, a railway engineering team, in order to meet deadlines, disregarded the strong opposition from local residents, and forcefully used explosives to blast through a mountain in the Double Range. But they didn't expect to awaken the mythical creature that had been sleeping inside. Amidst the clouds of dust and debris, the cave collapsed with a loud roar. All the workers perished in the incident. The consequences of this accident were serious. After receiving the news, the Norwegian government dispatched 2 military reconnaissance planes to the scene. They initially thought it was an earthquake or construction that caused the cave's collapse. However, when the reconnaissance planes transmitted images from the site, people discovered an unusual sight. A massive pit had appeared on the ground, which looked like it had been created by a meteor strike. At the same time, there were a series of enormous impressions around the pit, similar to footprints left by an unknown creature. However, among the existing species on Earth, there was nothing that could match them. This astonishing discovery caused panic among those in the know. The Norwegian authorities urgently convened experts from various fields for analysis and discussion. Paleontologist Nora was also invited. She was sent by the military to a secret base to participate in this unprecedented meeting. After everyone arrived, the military stated that although the possibility of a terrorist attack couldn't be ruled out yet, but based on the current situation, the geological possibility was greater. Nearby, a geologist also offered his perspective. He suggested that it could also be due to a subsurface cave collapse, or an explosion of a natural gas reservoir. The matter was about to reach a conclusion. Nora quickly spoke up to stop and ask others, haven't they noticed that those huge impressions are the footprints of some creature? The conference room fell into silence. At this moment, a technician rushed into the conference room and played a video recorded by onlookers. The footage showed the scene of the cave collapse. Everyone instantly looked grave. Nora also noticed something unusual in it. As the pause button was pressed, a tall figure resembling a human emerged from the dust. Meanwhile, in a farmhouse in the Gudbrands Valley, an elderly couple was enjoying their afternoon tea. Suddenly, the sound of frantic barking came from outside. Then, they felt a slight tremor in the ground. The couple immediately sensed something was wrong. As the tremors intensified, they quickly hid in the basement. The power system was destroyed by the strong tremors. After an unknown amount of time, they peeked out. What they saw left them horrified. Their once warm and bright home was shattered beyond recognition. The discussion meeting finally came to an end. Nora was appointed as a scientific advisor by the Prime Minister. She was preparing to investigate the accident site with her colleague Mand. However, as the helicopter flew over the valley, they were drawn to the site of the ravaged houses below. They decided to land nearby to inquire about what had just happened. At this moment, the military nearby was conducting a rescue operation. Captain Kim told them that an unknown object had come from the mountains and crossed the valley and stream. Heading south, it had left numerous footprints along the way. These tracks extended for 20 kilometers before disappearing. Looking at the damaged houses before her, Nora felt a creeping unease in her heart. If the destruction was indeed caused by an unknown creature, it must be beyond human imagination. She then visited the elderly couple. They said that although they had been hiding in the basement, they could still hear sounds from above. It seemed to be the howls of a beast, resembling a sorrowful melody. It evoked a deep sadness in those who heard it. Upon hearing this, Nora jumped into the pit and carefully examined each grain of sand using a UV light. She was trying to find any traces left by the creature, but in the end, she found nothing. Even the thermal imaging system on the plane failed to capture any biological data. Nora repeatedly sifted through the clues she had. In the next moment, she seemed to think of something. Nora took man to Black Mountain. It turned out that just moments ago, Nora suddenly recalled that her father loved to tell her stories about the mysterious trolls in the Davra Mountains. He seemed to firmly believe in these legends, and even had long lived in the mountains, seemingly searching for related clues. Although Nora had grown up not believing in any of it, for some reason, she always had a feeling that perhaps her father could truly help solve the mystery. After the welcoming ceremony, Nora and the others entered her father's residence. She found that the walls were covered with strange photographs and some news articles from years ago. One of the soldier photos caught man's attention. Similar events had already occurred as early as the winter of 1943. Something had emerged from the mountains. Nora interrupted her father, who was speaking animatedly. She informed him of her purpose for visiting. Looking at the massive footprints in the video, her father's eyes sparkled with excitement. He told Nora his hypothesis. These are likely the footprints left by trolls in the mountains. However, such an absurd idea was naturally met with opposition from others. After all, trolls were just a myth. Seeing that no one believed him, her father decided to investigate the truth with Nora. They took a helicopter back to the valley. Based on where the footprints disappeared, Nora's father deduced that the troll should be nearby. He then took an old map, comparing and examining the area around the footprints. Seeing her father's frenzied demeanor, Nora felt deeply concerned. She couldn't help but approach and ask what he had found. Unexpectedly, what her father said brought her some insight. Nora quickly pulled out her notebook to review the information and hypotheses she had recorded. But just then, a massive eye slowly opened. Nora was the first to sense something was wrong. She looked at the moving boulder in horror, and immediately pulled her father to escape in the direction of the helicopter. This bewildering scene was transmitted back to the command center via the camera. It immediately caused turmoil among the high-ranking officials. Everyone was filled with panic over the unknown creature, but Nora's father revealed an excited smile. His years of research had finally been validated. Shortly after, the group was urgently recalled to the command center. After listening to Nora and her father's report, the military concluded that the troll was certainly highly dangerous, and decided to take over the matter. They prepared to use weapons to kill the troll. However, Nora's father firmly believed that the engineering team's blasting operations had disturbed the sleeping troll. That was why it suddenly attacked humans. He suggested halting all construction work to prevent further disasters. In Nora's father's view, rather than solving the problem with force, it was better to try to understand and coexist peacefully. However, the government officials completely ignored him. Under the cover of night, armored vehicles, tanks, and armed helicopters rushed into the forest. They attempted to find any trace of the troll. Meanwhile, Nora, her father, and her colleague Mand also mixed into the team with Cam's help. She prepared to closely observe the troll's characteristics and behaviors, to find a way to coexist peacefully with it. Upon arriving in the valley, the fully armed army had set up a tight defense line around, and was fully prepared to confront at any time. As the drones ventured deeper, everyone held their breath, focusing intently on detecting the troll's presence. After an unknown amount of time, the drones still had not detected any targets. It seemed, as Nora had said, that the troll was very good at camouflage. The father and daughter discussed the legends of the troll again. Nora gradually understood her father's insistence. Their relationship began to return to what it once was. Just then, the troll that had been silent suddenly appeared. It moved with heavy steps, each step shaking the ground. The soldiers immediately went on high alert. Cam contacted the command center at once, after receiving the order to fire. But unexpectedly, the shells had no effect on the troll. Cam quickly ordered the team to continue fire coverage. Shells streaked across the dark night sky, striking the troll and creating dazzling sparks. However, as the smoke cleared, the troll remained unharmed. Instead, it roared and continued to advance toward them. Everyone fled in a panic toward the rear, but it was already too late. Nora and the others watched helplessly as an injured soldier was cruelly swallowed by the troll. At this moment, Nora's father suddenly made a surprising move. He raised his hands and slowly walked toward the troll, loudly indicating that he had no ill intentions. Then he spoke in a calm and firm tone to soothe the furious troll. To everyone's surprise, the troll actually calmed down. Her father looked triumphantly at Nora. It seemed he was right after all. The troll really could communicate. However, in the next second, The surviving soldiers disobeyed orders and launched an attack. The barrage of shells struck the troll, causing the already calm troll to erupt in fury once more. It instinctively threw the humans in front of it away. Then it crushed the armored vehicle, attacking it into a pancake. Nora, in a panic, rushed toward her father, but it was already too late. The elderly man, who had been struck by the tremendous force, was already gasping for breath. In the end, he couldn't hold on any longer. The troll stood still, gazing at the old man. To everyone's surprise, there was a look of regret in its eyes. Then it turned and walked away. Her father's death left Nora utterly devastated. Guilt and regret caused her immense pain. She struggled to pull herself away from the grief, and she recalled her father's last words. She was astonished to discover that this was a myth her father had once told her. Could it be that the troll simply wanted to go home after awakening? If, as her father said, there is some truth in the myth, will the troll be as sensitive and hateful to the church bell as the legend says? Thinking of this, Nora felt a bold idea take shape in her mind. She informed the Norwegian government of her discovery. Then she proposed a plan to use high-frequency bell sounds to control the troll. At first, the higher-ups thought she was joking, but Cam insisted that firearms were indeed ineffective against the troll. After a heated discussion, the government agreed to Nora's proposal. But would this method truly succeed in subduing the troll? After several days of planning and deployment, Nora's plan was finally ready to be implemented. At this moment, a large amusement park was hosting a lively festival celebration. People were playing and gathering joyfully, filled with a spirit of happiness everywhere. Unbeknownst to them, danger was quietly approaching. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. The troll, like a moving mountain, slowly walked into the crowd. The visitors immediately panicked and scattered in all directions. Meanwhile, 4 military helicopters entered the scene as planned. Each one was equipped with a massive bell hanging beneath. They quickly surrounded the troll, ringing the bells to emit heavy chimes. This tactic proved effective. The troll's face displayed signs of pain. Just as everyone thought they had succeeded, the troll grabbed a building from the ground and hurled it violently at the helicopter hovering nearby. Seeing a crashing helicopter, which was about to crash onto a boy on the ground, in a critical moment, the troll unexpectedly caught the falling aircraft, saving a fragile life. Nora and the others witnessed this scene. They were all left in shock. Why would this troll intervene to save a person? But before they could comprehend it, the troll slowly turned and continued moving in a specific direction. The live footage transmitted by the helicopter caused a sensation worldwide. Media outlets from various countries rushed to report on this phenomenon. The Norwegian people felt extreme panic. Under the scrutiny and pressure from all sides, the Prime Minister was forced to hold a press conference. He stated that they were doing everything possible to address the issue. However, Nora's plan's failure caused the government to lose trust in her. Fortunately, Mand and Cam still supported her. At this time, the military had begun to evacuate the public. But before the evacuation, Nora suddenly remembered her father's words. So she and Mand went to the Prime Minister's palace. There, they met her father's friend Reed. He was also a guardian of the palace, and naturally knew many secrets about this castle. Reed led them to a cave, where they were met with a pile of giant bones. Then Reed told them that the current palace was built on the ruins of the Troll Kingdom, because people in the past believed that building the palace on another king's homeland would bring endless good fortune. To eliminate rivals, the Norwegian king at the time slaughtered the trolls. The only surviving troll child was left in the deep mountains to fend for itself. Little did they know that 1,000 years later, it would be unintentionally awakened by a construction crew. Instinct drove it back to its former home, which is now the Norwegian palace. Nora silently walked over to the skeletons. She shone a UV light on one of the skeletons, only to find the bones starting to turn to sand. So this was what my father said about the trolls waking up in the night and turning into stones at sunrise. However, it had been overcast for several days, which allowed the trolls to appear in daylight. Thus, a new plan began to form in her mind. They could use artificial light sources to simulate sunlight, to drive the trolls back into the mountains. However, at this moment, the troll had already arrived in the city center. The military was already on high alert, and launched intense bombardments, but it was evident that firearms were completely ineffective in stopping the troll's advance. To eliminate the threat, the government prepared to launch missiles to contend with the troll. However, this posed a risk of destroying the city. Fortunately, Man contacted a friend skilled in computers. He decided to attempt to hack into the missile launch system to delay the firing of the ammunition. At the same time, Cam received Nora's message to prepare enough UV light devices to effectively simulate the effect of sunlight. Following that, Nora and Man rushed towards the troll carrying a set of troll bones. Sensing the presence of its kin, the troll immediately changed direction and relentlessly pursued the vehicle. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. However, just as they were about to arrive at the location where the ultraviolet lamps were set up, an unexpected accident suddenly occurred. The ropes binding the skeleton suddenly snapped. The giant skull fell from the vehicle. Nora quickly turned around, but the troll had already picked up the skeleton. It let out a tremendous wail when the skull accidentally fell and shattered. The troll's sorrow transformed into rage. It prepared to unleash its fury on Nora and Man. The two immediately started the vehicle and fled. Nora floored the accelerator, racing at full speed. Finally, they lured the troll into an ambush zone. Then the two decisively drove away to escape. They narrowly escaped a dangerous situation. Meanwhile, Cam also ordered the activation of the UV lights. Several beams of light shot toward the troll, trapping it firmly in place. In an instant, the troll let out a tremendous howl and struggled violently to break free from the light cage. The command center halted the missile launch orders. Nora looked at the suffering troll and felt a strong sense of guilt and compassion. She remembered her father's words: sunlight could directly kill the mountain creature. Nora quickly turned off all the light sources. Then she ran to the front of the troll. She shouted for it to return to the mountains. However, the damage caused by the UV light was irreversible. The troll stood frozen in place, unable to move, as the first rays of sunlight fell in the morning. This fearsome giant creature gradually dissolved in the blinding light. Finally, it collapsed to the ground with a loud thud, transforming into a towering stone mountain. Endless sorrow filled Nora's eyes. She slowly approached and touched the troll's body. Its eyes were rapidly turning to stone. Humans had saved themselves without serious harm, but Nora couldn't feel happy. She sighed deeply. The conflict between humanity and nature could only end in such tragedy? Thus, the film comes to an end. Overall, the film's visual effects were commendable. It did a good job of depicting the mountain creatures from Norse mythology. However, the ending felt a bit rushed, but overall, the flaws didn't overshadow the merits. Ultimately, the film seeks to explore whether humanity and nature can coexist harmoniously. I believe everyone has their own perspective on this. Friends who are interested can check out the original film. Troll. If you enjoy my channel, please click to subscribe to my channel.